Welcome to the program. John Whitehead joins me. He is a celebrated best-selling author and the founder and director of the Rutherford Institute. John's most recent book is Battlefield America, the War on the American People. John, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks, Coy.
So let's start by asking your reaction to the recent Supreme Court decision, a bombshell Fourth Amendment case. I believe it's Utah versus Strife. Help us understand the takeaways from this. The court greatly expanded and empowered law enforcement to what some might say to violate our Fourth Amendment rights even more.
Well, all the constitutional scholars, some are saying the Fourth Amendment's now gutted, and we can talk, the Fourth Amendment's really important, but in the case, suppose the police were watching an apartment in Utah and people were coming in and out, and they stopped this one guy and asked for his license, and he anteed it up and showed it to them. And they found that by doing a background check real quick, which they can do automatically now with their cell phones, they found out that he had an outstanding warrant traffic violation. And they immediately did a search using that as the pretext and supposedly found some drugs on him. Of course, he got a lawyer. It was an unreasonable search and seizure. And why they say that is the Fourth Amendment's really clear. It says before the police can stop and search you, before the NSA can do surveillance on you, they have to have probable cause. That's some evidence of illegality. They had no evidence. They seized supposedly his drugs. His lawyer moved to suppress it. The Utah Supreme Court actually ruled that the so-called drug paraphernalia should be excluded, that it was an unreasonable search and seizure, and reaffirmed the Fourth Amendment. The government in Utah appealed the case, and the Supreme Court actually reversed, saying that it was basically reasonable, they could do it, and they didn't need probable cause. So Sotomayor, Justice Sotomayor had an amazing dissent.
Oh, her dissent was
I tell people if you can go online,
powerful.
we have it on our line at rutherford.org, you can go read it, but
it's fantastic.
she goes through the history and says, this is it, we've gutted the amendment, now you can stop anybody under any pretext in America like regimes. And she actually said we no longer live in a democracy. That's exactly what she said. After reading the opinion and then opinions leading up to this now, where if you're pulled over and just arrested now, they can do a full strip search of you up into your body parts and stuff like that. The Supreme Court's upheld that. So what we've seen is a steadily progression towards eliminating the great anti-police state, which I call our surveillance statute, which in our Constitution is the Fourth Amendment, which was put in there because, as I show in my book, Battlefield America, the early founding fathers were getting raided, they were getting searched on the streets. When they finally got their freedom, they said, hey, the key ones, we want an amendment protecting us.
We don't want that happening again.
No, we don't want to be searched on the streets. They should, you just can't, if you do, you live in a totalitarian regime. If you look back at former regimes in some countries today, you can be pulled over willy-nilly by anybody and searched, and if they can find something on you to implement you or get you in some kind of criminal activity, that's what police and those societies doing. Now, as the Justice Sotomayor says, that's the pretext. Now, if let's say they don't like the way Coy Barefoot's a civil libertarian and we'd like to cause him some trouble, they can pull you over, and if you have an outstanding warrant, they can search you. If they find something that may be illegal on you or whatever, or not, they can still harass you.
Through a series, and this is just one, but through a series of decisions by the High Court, they have made it increasingly easy for members of law enforcement to detain and search American citizens.
Exactly.
And it's gotten to the point where they really don't even need a pretense anymore.
No,
they
no
can
pretense.
They can
Under
just
this
do
decision, they don't need a pretense. And what it does away, and it's good, I talk to police every day. They said we need the Fourth Amendment. A lot of good cops talk to me. They said it does away with officer discretion. In other words, there are some police who, like to cause trouble. That's obvious. And from the cases we're seeing across the country, not all police, majority of them not. But this gives officers discretion now if they decide they want to pinpoint or go after somebody, a troublemaker. And we're seeing it also with the watch list issue we're going to be talking about. I mean, if they want to put you on a list or this list and watch you, and we already know the NSA is doing that. Edward Snowden gave us a tip off to that.
Right.
And with my research, seeing how all the social media now is watching us, and most people don't realize this, but the Department of Homeland Security announced about 6 months ago, everybody has a threat assessment now, every American essentially. You're looked at and you're given a threat assessment from green to red, And it's based on algorithms. In other words, they look at all your social media, your texting, your emails, what you say on Facebook. It's all fed into a government database set up by Amazon, by the way. Amazon was given $600 million to build the database. And so everybody has a threat assessment, whether it's green or whatever, and they watch you according to that threat assessment. It's basically a computer. And a former Secret Service agent who worked for the NSA said that, he told me this, he said, John, the computer does the analysis now of us, gives it to the agent, and this guy can be an orange, a purple, which is next to red. If you're a red, you might get SWAT teamed. And there are over 80,000 SWAT teams.
And it removes human analysts from that equation.
Human analysts are gone, and the policemen are going to show up.
AI stuff.
And they may be agitated. You're wondering if you get stopped on the street sometimes and a policeman pinpoints you and he's agitated, that's because of your threat assessment that some computer has delivered up.
So John, what's your response to Americans who see this kind of thing, the decision of the Supreme Court, and they say, I have no problem with that. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm never going to be anything doing. It's not going to affect me. This just empowers law enforcement to do the deadly, dangerous job that they need to do, and it'll keep us safe.
Well, the point is that FBI tells us crime's at a 40-year low, officers getting killed in the line of duty is at a 50-year low. This is FBI statistics. So there's not a lot of danger out there. The other problem I see is with the increasing amount of laws and regulations passed today, we get the cases where a veteran wants to grow a tomato garden. It's illegal in his town. The neighbors call the police and say he has a tomato garden. They arrive and sometimes arrest these people, take their chickens. Some people can't have chickens. We had a case in Norfolk, okay? A lady had one chicken for eggs. They took her chicken and threatened to arrest her. So there's so many crimes out there today. There's one professor who has analyzed this, and he says the average American commits up to 3 crimes a day and they don't really know it. So you really don't have to be doing anything wrong in the old sense in 1940, 1950, 1960, but in today's society, there's no telling what you're doing.
Yeah, and as we know from our study of history, that is the classic tool of a totalitarian state.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that. That's just a fact of history.
No, I mean, I show it in my book, Battlefield America, just studying history, and that's the key. I tell people, well, you should know the Fourth Amendment, study history, why the so-called Founding Fathers gave us. And number 2 is, what societies did it go wrong in? And we saw that with Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, and things like that.
Yeah.
And what I'm afraid of, and I've written about it quite extensively, is, and I'm not the only one saying it today, there are a lot of people talking about this, we're going in the wrong direction. Do we really want to repeat this? And again, people say, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. Well, if you're not doing anything wrong, the question I've got to ask is, why is the government violating the Fourth Amendment and doing surveillance on you through all your social media? Why did 10 FBI agents just move into the Oakland Police Department for one function, to study social media? They're doing that around the country. So there is, I would say, as we see with the armament of federal agents, which we want to talk about in a minute, is a sort of, I would call it paranoia about the average American. And here's the thing, with all their investigations and stuff, they're failing to get the so-called terrorists. And I had a former Secret Service agent said the problem with most of us today in our intelligence agencies is we're watching everybody. He says if you're watching everybody, you don't get the guy that you need to get because you're not doing your police work anymore.
Right.
We're too busy, voyeurism, is that what they used to call it?
Yeah. Well, along those same lines, let me ask you about the guy that they missed in Orlando, and specifically the reaction, the political reaction vis-a-vis guns on the part of the Democratic Party. They had this sit-in in the House of Representatives demanding that the Republicans actually have a debate and have a conversation about guns. Their proposal was that we need a new secret watch list, a terror watch list, and that if you get on this list, no one knows who's on the list, no one knows exactly how you get on the list, but if you are on the list, you can't fly, you can't buy guns. This is what's being proposed by the Democratic Party. Some members of the Democratic Party, the latest proposal to deal with the threat of gun violence in America. What's your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction is that they haven't been very good. The criteria they're using is bumbling. I mean, this is a quote from the ACLU recently.
The ACLU, by the way, which
they're opposing this now.
legislation.
Yeah. We've worked with the ACLU on the issues like this. The problem is that we don't know what the criteria is. You don't know if you're put on the list, and it's a key due process issue. And what's due process? Under our Constitution, we have due process rights, under various amendments. And what it says is if you're being watched by the government or you're accused of something, you need to know exactly what you're accused of and be given a hearing. And they're not doing that. I mean, this is really far out. People forget in the mid-2000s, Edward Kennedy went before Congress. He was put on a watch list. He tried to get on the airplane and was denied it. He went before Congress, mad as H, if you want to say that, really upset over it. Nelson Mandela was placed on a watch list, and now we find out an 8-year-old kid, Eddie Hicks, is on that watch list. His parents are shocked. They don't know why he's on the watch list. They were never told till they tried to get on an airplane. So their criteria is obviously bumbling, and we're getting ready to draft a letter and proposal to some key subcommittees. And what I would like to see, and this is key on these watch lists, is A, let me see the criteria you're using. I need notice of it. And number two, if I'm on some kind of watch list, I need to know that so I can get me a lawyer and get off of it, because I shouldn't be on it. I shouldn't wait till I want to try to fly or if I want to buy a gun or something like that. As far as the gun proposals, I think reasonable gun regulation is a good idea, and I think most people agree with that. However, people don't realize, if you don't study it, there are over 200,000 federal agents now with SWAT team gear, et cetera. They're not military, more than the Marine Corps. There's only 182,000 people in the Marine Corps. You've got the Social Security Administration, the Department of Education running around with all kinds of gear. If we're going to regulate American citizens, when the Second Amendment is a fundamental right, the Supreme Court's ruled that, then we need to also regulate people carrying those big guns around.
For government agencies.
Exactly. These are non-military. Listen, the Department of Fisheries has hollow point bullets. The Social Security Administration has hollow point bullets. For those who don't know what those are, when they hit you, they expand on contact and rip your flesh out. Why are they having bullets like that? That to me is crazy. That should be, I don't think American agents should be running around with that. Maybe if they were defending a foreign attack, but when they're aiming it at Coy Barefoot, John Whitehead, my wife, or whatever,
right,
you got to be kidding me. So it needs to be a balanced debate. But here's the other thing I'd say too. The FBI investigated the guy down in Orlando, the Boston bombers, and a few other, they tend to be bumbling. And there's been no investigation of the FBI on any of this stuff. I mean, and the reason is, I think, is, one, it's secret. What's the criteria they're using? We don't know it. Could it be a federal agent say, hey, I just don't like the way this guy talks? It could be. I've been told that by Secret Service agents.
Yeah. There's a terrific book, The Terror Factory, and it's about how the FBI has arrested a certain number of people for terrorism in America, but they all turn out to be people with mental deficiencies, people that were totally set up by the FBI.
Informers.
Informants. They create the situation where the terrorist plot occurs. They come up with it.
Informers get up to $100,000 a year for getting people in trouble.
Yeah.
The question is that the way we want our government to operate? To me, that sounds rather corrupt.
Okay, John, let's take a quick break. When we get back, we'll talk about the new regulations announced by the FAA regarding the use of drones by private citizens and companies. You're watching the Coy Barefoot Program, and we will be right back. Stay with me. Welcome back. We're talking with civil liberties attorney John Whitehead. He's the founder of the Rutherford Institute. You can learn more online at rutherford.org. John's most recent book is Battlefield America, the War on the American People. John, you have written for years about drones, what we used to call model airplanes and remote controlled airplanes. But now these things are much more sophisticated, and they're able to bear they have the load capacity for a camera to take still pictures, video image, to capture audio. You have written about this for a long time, and the FAA only recently announced the much anticipated regulations for the use of drones.
Private, yeah.
But they had nothing to say about privacy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So,
key.
and that's been your concern. So what's your reaction to this new announcement?
Well, you know, I'm not against people flying drones as long as it's safe. They're not going to crash into airplanes, and of course they're going to supposedly control that. The one question you raised, it's privacy. If they're filming you, and they will have cameras, most of them, you should have protection. I would say local governments should already be setting up privacy regulations themselves if the government's not going to do it. And I'm not sure the federal government's going to do it because it's such a lucrative business, and it's so powerful, the amount of money going to be made off of drones. They're saying an $80 million a year business just starting right off. It's getting into the billions of dollars. That there's not going to be a lot of regulations that are going to stymie the use of them. So they're going to have cameras. The question is, should they be filming in your front yard through your windows and those kind of things? I would say we need privacy from that. If they film you, they should not be able to use any of that footage in a court of law. Now remember, I wrote the bill that passed here in 2013.
Right.
The first one in the world written by Charlottesville. And I said government drones should not be armed with any of their devices, which can be quite powerful. And number two, any evidence they collect should not be used against you in a court of law. And some people ask me why. The reason is that with the drone technology, they have infrared technology, even the small ones now. They can scan your home and see what you're doing inside your home. They have hummingbird drones, and the robotics is moving ahead very, very quickly.
Yeah.
They're saying in Britain pretty soon, working in some places, robotics or androids are going to be replacing human beings pretty soon. There'll be more androids in the workplace, and I've seen some of the advanced technology. So it's something that if the federal government's not going to take care of it, they may not, local government's going to have to do it. And one thing it's been very, very quiet the last year or so, but doing some research, there are over 40 bases in the United States now that are flying the large drones. The Department of Homeland Security has their own Predator drone fleet for the United States. And if you know what Predator drones are, they're the ones that the President of the United States, Obama, has been sending over to bomb people, and they're deadly. And they'll have weapons on them. We have no protection from that. They're scanning devices. And we go back to what we were talking about earlier, the Fourth Amendment, why privacy is so important, you know, how we can operate in our homes, and are we always being watched, or do we have to be looking over our shoulder all the time? And I say living in a free government means not having to look over your shoulder to see who's watching, if it's a government agent or even if your next door neighbor. So
I was talking with Claire Gassagnaga one time, a good friend of both of ours, who's the director of the Virginia ACLU, and I'll never forget the time she told me, she said, Coy, if you don't have privacy, you don't have freedom.
Yep.
It's as simple as that. It's nothing. It's nothing that can be eaten away at the edges here. You either have it or you don't.
Yep.
And right now we see increasingly decisions by the courts, decisions by elected leaders, by government agencies. They don't value privacy. They just no longer see that as something that should be protected at all costs.
yeah, and one reason I think is, and again, I've been at this for over 40 years, working in and out of Washington, D.C., suing. And it's kind of how they view us. I hear this word now more and more frequently used by government people in high places. They refer to us as economic units, which is a weird term. And I was going, wait a second, economic unit, are you a computer? Or does that equal cattle? What do you, and it's the way they view us as taxable objects, revenue, those kind of things. And they're not viewing us as human beings anymore. So I think they need a really good lesson how human beings operate.
It's a return to a medieval way of thinking, when the public was referred to as cattle, and they were called the herd, and they were dangerous.
Now we're economic units.
Right.
We're controlled. And one of the things, I have students this summer, I have a student intern program. The biggest thing I emphasize with them is that you can have all the laws in the world, all these things, but if you lose how you view people, you lose your freedom. And how do we view people? With great worth and dignity. That's why you have a Fourth Amendment. That's why we have a Bill of Rights, because the people who wrote the Constitution believed that we had dignity, and no one should walk up and go, come here, I want to talk to you right away, and it's a government agent or a policeman or whoever they might be. They didn't have that right because, hey, I'm equal to you. You know, I'm paying your taxes. Well, that's another thing we didn't raise here on this program, is who's the master and who's the servant? If I'm paying your taxes, I'm the employer. And people forget the Constitution starts with those three beautiful words, we the people. We are the government. I tell people, you're not going to be the government. You are the government. And remember, those guys in Congress, your people in the city council, they're representatives of you. So you're the government. Hold them accountable. And don't let this stuff go on in your communities. And again, start making sure that they're going to treat us like people and not, I don't want to be an economic unit. I'm sorry, because the Constitution says I'm a person, not an economic unit.
Well, and the word citizen is supposed to mean something.
Exactly.
That's the whole point, right?
Yeah, citizen means you're the boss in the government. The citizen pays the taxes. As long as I'm paying the taxes, I should be able to say, hey, wait a second, follow the Constitution, man. I'm walking away from you.
John, speaking of grabbing somebody, a judge recently announced his decision in the case of the driver of the van in the death of Freddie Gray, the Baltimore citizen who was picked up off the street and given what even members of law enforcement said was a rough ride, which was a rather common practice. It was known in Baltimore. This is how police described it, a rough ride. There had been a case years ago where a citizen was given a rough ride and came out of the van a paraplegic. Freddie Gray came out dead. But the judge said, I see no evidence of a rough ride, and he even scolded the prosecuting attorneys for using the phrase and said, I don't want you to use that phrase, it's too inflammatory. Even though the police were the ones who used the phrase.
A lot of police thought it was a problem. I talked to them.
So what about this decision in the case of Freddie Gray?
It's typical what I'm seeing across the country with a lot of law enforcement actions that are being excused, what they call, they're granted qualified immunity immediately in most cases. But it also goes through the judicial system, which I'm really concerned about today. The more judges I talk to, interact with, and some of the people that work with me over the years have become judges, and they get a mentality that somehow they're no longer part of the people and they're enforcing some kind of governmental law. And I keep saying, that's why I ask police officers occasionally, they say, I'm a law enforcement officer. And I say, well, what's the law you're enforcing? And they look at me and I go, the Constitution, dude. That's what you're enforcing. So that's, again, it goes back to that view, how we view people. And I'm really concerned when you look at the Supreme Court. I mean, we had the case of Harold Hodge, if you remember. It was the guy, he protested in 20,000-foot square in front of the Supreme Court. They arrested him. 60-year-old law in Congress who says you can't portray a message in the 20,000-foot square in front of the Supreme Court. And
the front steps
we
of the
won the
Supreme
case.
Court,
The judge ruled that it was repugnant to the Constitution in Washington, D.C. Justice Roberts the next day issued his own regulation saying no one could be out there. He just defied the court with a flick of his hand.
And for those who don't know exactly, the ruling was basically that the front steps of the Supreme Court are an anti-free speech zone.
Not just the front steps, to the left and to the right. It's a 20,000-foot square. He wasn't even standing on the Supreme Court steps. He was standing far to the left as you're facing it.
And just wanted to protest something
silently.
the court was doing. But the members of the court don't want protests on their front stoop.
No, they don't.
The one place in America you would think there would be absolute sanctity of free speech.
Well, they say you can protest out in front of the Supreme Court, but Harold said he went out in front of the Supreme Court, and what shocked him, he said there was just a lineup of black-clad policemen with helmets on, and you couldn't even look onto the square. They were all blocking it. He said, is this what free speech is all about, John?
So what gives you hope, John Whitehead? What do you look at out across America today after decades of fighting for civil liberties? What gives you hope that things will get better? Because we know a lot of things are getting worse. When we look at civil liberties, human and civil rights, they're getting worse.
They are getting worse.
In the one country that was set up to be the place where they would always get better, today people are very concerned. And you and I both know they have strong reasons for their concern.
They should be. Well, the Harold Hodges of the world, someone who's willing to get arrested just to make a statement that this law is wrong. Some of the young people in my intern program who get it right away and say, hey, I'm gonna try to make it better. Looking at history, people like Martin Luther King, who was one of my heroes, people like that who say, I'm willing to get arrested, I'll sit in, I'll do whatever it takes to change things. It's always citizen action, it's we the people. And there's still people around who want to do that. The problem, and I see this today, is there used to be a parity in government where, and people come to me all the time and say, I'm getting my gun, I'm going to go out in the street. I said, dude, don't do that. There's no longer any parity. You'll get blown away. Local police departments have enough firepower to blow away a militia now. That ain't going to work anymore.
That's the 18th century model.
That's the 18th century model. It ain't going to work anymore, man. What will work is people getting down to their local city council and saying, we've had enough, we're going to pass the first drone regulation in the world, and doing stuff like that. And we had a great turnout that day, and it works. So local action, you can even, under the 10th Amendment, you can tell the federal government we're not going to go by these things. We're not going to follow rules that violate our rights, and you can do that.
Local action, local government,
Good.
still
That's
a
it.
powerful place
That's
to be
what
heard
they
and
gave
to-
us.
yeah.
That's what the people who wrote the Constitution gave us.
Yeah.
Use it.
Thank you, John Whitehead.
Thank you.
For everything you do. John Whitehead, he is at the Rutherford Institute. You can learn more online at rutherford.org, and make sure you get a copy of his latest book, Battlefield America, The War on the American People. I'm Coy Barefoot. You can find the complete archive of our program online at mediaandcitizenship.org. Have a terrific week, and y'all be good to each other.